You can look for love all your life and still not find it. You can be in a relationship where you're not appreciated. You can fall in love and cling and hope, but over and over, it all falls apart. Why? Carl Jung said, until you realize who you are, everything that happens to you will seem like fate. This video isn't Instagram advice, it's real psychology. Why you love the wrong people, why you are not loved, and why everything starts not with them, but with you. Self-love is not a slogan, it's a psychic reality. We've grown up in a culture where love is an exchange. Make yourself better, and you'll be loved. First you earn it, then you get it. But Jung showed this is an illusion. You can't build a relationship if you're empty inside because you're not looking for love. You're looking for the recognition you need to give yourself. Whatever you haven't accepted in yourself, you'll look for in someone else. That's projection. Relationships are a mirror of your unconscious. You think it's not my fault that you get toxic partners. But Jung would ask you what it is inside of you that attracts them. If you don't value yourself, you won't recognize someone who does. If you don't need yourself, you'll be grateful for crumbs of attention. Relationships don't create your value. They reflect it. And as long as there's resentment, fear, mistrust, you'll get partner. Carl Jung, a prominent psychiatrist and founder of analytical psychology, said that the relationships we are in are a mirror of our inner reality. He believed that to understand what is going on in our lives and why, we need to look inside ourselves. Self-love, according to Jung, is not just an abstract feeling, but the foundation upon which all of our relationships with the world around us are built. In this video, we will be talking about how understanding ourselves, recognizing our value, and recognizing our needs can dramatically change our relationships and lead to personal transformation. This Jungian philosophy is not simple, but at the same time is extremely important for those seeking harmony and love in their lives. We often seek love and acceptance from the outside, but true love begins with acceptance of ourselves, the inner work that allows us to build a strong foundation for any relationship. So let's explore what self-love is and how it changes the way we perceive our relationships with the people around us. At first glance, self-love may seem like a simple concept, but it is actually deeply connected to the inner beliefs we acquire from childhood and the often hidden mechanisms of the psyche that are difficult to realize. It is through these filters that we perceive the world and build relationships, trying to fill in the voids and gaps that seem important to us. That's why it's important to learn to value yourself before you start looking for love in others. Realizing that your worth is not dependent on external approval, that you are self-sufficient, is the first step to creating a healthy, reciprocal, and harmonious relationship. Many of us are inherently attached to the idea of external recognition. We long to be loved, to be recognized, to be needed. However, Jung pointed out that love does not have to be an external factor. True love begins within, when you accept yourself, when your worth does not depend on what others think of you. We often project our inner problems onto people, creating toxic and dependent relationships. Projection is a mental mechanism by which we see traits in other people that are actually our own, but that we can't recognize in ourselves. If we don't accept our dark side, we will see it in others, attracting people who may reflect our inner conflicts and unresolved issues. This is how unhealthy relationships begin, where we lose ourselves trying to find love in another person. In reality, to learn to love others, you must first love yourself, recognize your worth, even if society or those around you do not. The path to healthy relationships begins with inner work, with honesty and recognizing your uniqueness. Self-love is not selfishness. It's recognizing that you are worthy of being happy and loved, and that your feelings and needs matter. It also means being able to set boundaries and respect your feelings, even if others don't always understand you. Jung argued that self-determination and self-knowledge are the keys to mental and emotional well-being. Only in this state can a person build fulfilling and mature relationships. Emotional well-being and self-confidence directly affect how we perceive others and how they perceive us. A healthy connection with ourselves allows us to respect and value others, rather than looking to them for validation of our own worth. We can only give love and attention to those who are able to reciprocate without expecting anything in return. Relationships begin to change when we change our perception of ourselves, when we accept our wholeness and do not look for external validation. Carl Jung emphasized that relationships with other people are a mirror of our inner states and beliefs. If we want to understand why certain scenarios repeat themselves in our lives, it is worth looking at ourselves. Many of us blame others for our failed relationships, but more often than not, the reason lies in how we perceive ourselves and what we fail to realize about our inner workings. When we undervalue ourselves, when we don't know how to love ourselves, we are like a magnet attracting people who don't see our worth. We become available to those who also don't value themselves and don't know how to love. In these relationships, we try to find what we lack, but instead of being filled with love, we become emotionally dependent. If we don't recognize our worth, our perception of the world and people will be distorted. We will perceive love as something to be earned rather than a natural feeling that arises from our inner state. Our relationships become the product of our internal attitudes that have been formed over the course of our lives. They are an extension of how we perceive ourselves and reflect our own self-esteem. When we begin to realize this, we can take responsibility for our emotions and relationships. To change the dynamics of our relationships, we need to start by working on ourselves, by realizing that we are not victims of circumstance. We created our reality and only we can change it. By listening to our inner self, we will be able to choose people who reflect our value and respect for ourselves. This doesn't mean that all relationships have to be perfect, but we stop tolerating toxic relationships and start creating space for true love. This moment is familiar to many of us. You meet a new person and everything starts out so bright, so exciting. There's passion, attention, excitement. Your heart beats faster. There are sparks in your eyes. But after a while, everything changes. Instead of happiness, you start to feel anxious. The partner becomes less available. Your expectations are not met, and you begin to feel an inner emptiness. At first, you think it's a common problem, that there's something in the relationship that just needs to be fixed. But in fact, it's a sign that you're not falling in love with the person, but with what they bring out in you. It's an unconscious attachment mechanism that often arises when we encounter parts of ourselves that we are unfamiliar with or reject. Jung talked about how in relationships we often project our unconscious aspects. This can be either our animus, the masculine part of our personality in women, or our anima, the feminine part of our personality in men. When you fall in love with someone, You don't just fall in love with their looks, qualities, or behavior. You fall in love with what that person evokes in you. He may awaken your hidden desires or feelings that you can't express or acknowledge in yourself. This makes the relationship especially intense because it is not about the real person, but about what he represents to you on a deep unconscious level. This mechanism tends to lead to addiction. You begin to look for in the other person what you are missing inside. At some point, this crush turns into an addiction and the relationship becomes unhealthy. When you stop feeling your inner wholeness, no one and nothing in the world can make up for it. Dependence on another person becomes what Jung called projection. You begin to see in the other person what you lack in yourself. This could be something important like confidence, courage, calmness, or even something deeper and more hidden, such as your own ability to accept and love yourself. This process causes you to end up losing yourself in the relationship, trying to find the love that should actually be coming from you. This is especially true for people who have not learned to love themselves. They are often looking for a love that will fill their inner emptiness. But that kind of love doesn't exist because it always starts inside. So what can we do to get out of this circle? First of all, it is necessary to learn how to work with this inner request. Instead of looking for love in another person, you need to learn to find it in yourself first. Begin to realize your feelings. Accept your weaknesses and strengths. Allow yourself to be who you are without having to justify yourself to others. This doesn't mean you should shut yourself off from people or stop pursuing relationships. It does mean that relationships shouldn't be the only source of your value. Begin to see love as a natural consequence of your inner state, rather than something that can only be obtained through another person. It's important to realize that attachment to people who can't fulfill your emotional needs often arises because we keep looking for something in them that is missing in ourselves. When you realize this, you can free yourself from the trap of a dependent relationship. This liberation empowers you to build healthier relationships based on mutual respect and understanding. Such relationships are only possible when both partners value and love themselves, rather than simply looking to the other person for validation of their worth. How to change the script and attract other relationships. If you want to change the dynamics of your relationships and stop attracting people who don't fit your needs, the first step is to recognize your responsibility. Recognizing that you are your own source of love and value is the first step to real change. You can't change other people, but you can change your attitude toward yourself and the energy you exude. When you begin to respect yourself, your boundaries become clear. You start making decisions that are in line with your inner values. You stop tolerating devaluation, manipulation, and toxic behavior from others. Instead of following someone, you begin to attract those who match your level of inner confidence. There is no room for victimization or suffering in this process. You don't seek love. You allow it to come naturally. This is fundamentally different from the usual model, where love is seen as something to be earned or found. True love comes when you don't chase after it, but simply live in harmony with yourself. This process of self-acceptance can be long, but it has no alternative if you want to have a healthy and deep relationship. When you become a whole and confident person, You are not dependent on external recognition or approval. You know who you are, and this gives you inner strength and resilience. When you feel your value, you stop looking for it in others. Your relationships become mature and balanced rather than dependent and painful. At that point, there is room in your life for those people who can understand, appreciate, and love you for who you are. Not for what you do or what you have to offer them, but for your authentic self. In this relationship, there is no room for manipulation, no room for hidden expectations. It is a relationship where both partners operate on the basis of mutual respect and honesty. To begin this process is to completely change your attitude towards yourself and your life. You can stop looking for love because it will start to find you. Self-esteem as the foundation of relationship health. One of the most important aspects of personal relationship change is working with your own self-esteem. You can't attract healthy, harmonious relationships if you don't feel worthy of love and respect. Self-esteem is not just an idea of how good you are in the eyes of others. It is first and foremost the ability to perceive yourself without unnecessary embellishments, without idealization or self-criticism. Self-esteem begins with accepting your real personality, with the flaws and imperfections we all have. Carl Jung said, "He who does not love himself cannot love another." Understanding and accepting this principle not only frees you from the fear of loneliness, but also allows you to build more balanced and authentic relationships. If your self-esteem is inflated or low, it will affect your perception of others and your ability to find harmonious relationships. Low self-esteem causes us to seek validation of our worth in the outside world, and as a result, we often find ourselves in toxic relationships. We seek to prove our worth to others by trying to get them to love us, when the most important love should come from ourselves. High self-esteem, in turn, can lead to ignoring other people's feelings, self-centeredness, and misunderstanding our partner. The challenge is to find a balance between these extremes, to learn to love ourselves in full acceptance of ourself. To do this, it is important to learn to observe your reactions, how you perceive yourself in different situations. Recognizing your weaknesses without idealizing them or blaming yourself for them is the basis for true self-knowledge and growth. If you are able to be honest with yourself, you will also be honest with them. By developing a healthy self-esteem, you begin to be more confident in yourself and, as a result, more confident in your relationships. Such a person is not afraid to express his needs, set boundaries, and give rejection. He is not inclined to allow himself to be used or manipulated. He knows his worth, and this is perceived by those around him. Self-esteem is not expressed by showing your value to others, but by acting as if you are already confident in your worth, without the need for others to confirm it. To develop self-esteem, it is important to conduct self-analysis, to answer honestly to yourself about your weaknesses and strengths, to make decisions based on your own values and beliefs, not on the desire to please others. You need to learn to let go of what doesn't fit your inner world and focus on developing those qualities that help you feel fulfilled. When you see your value and respect yourself, you begin to attract people into your life who can also appreciate you. This doesn't mean that all relationships will be perfect or painless, but they will be more mature and constructive because they come from who you really are, not what you want to show the world. The path to inner balance through awareness and acceptance. When we begin to delve into the topic of love and relationships, it is important to recognize that all of these processes have to do with how we perceive ourselves and how we communicate with the world. According to Jung, until we realize what is hidden in our unconscious, it will govern our lives and we will call it destiny. This means that all of our choices, including our choice of partner, are often driven by unconscious beliefs and patterns. These beliefs can be both positive and destructive. For example, if you grew up in an atmosphere where you were told that love was difficult and had to be earned, you will seek out relationships that fulfill those expectations. Relationships where you have to fight for love or seek validation of your worth. This unconscious perception of love will keep you in cycles of toxic relationships where you constantly feel unappreciated. To break this cycle, you need to start with awareness. Awareness is the first step to transformation. When you realize that your choices and experiences are not random, you begin to realize which of your beliefs and projections are influencing your reality. It is important to begin by taking an honest look at your internal attitudes and letting go of those that are preventing you from living a fulfilling life. Becoming aware of your reactions and beliefs will help you understand what behaviors are repeated in your relationships and how they affect your life. Once you begin to recognize these hidden patterns, you can change them and begin to build healthier, more mature relationships. To do this, you need to pay attention to your emotions and reactions. If you find yourself feeling fearful or anxious about your partners, think about where these emotions are coming from. They may be coming from deep within your unconscious. Understanding this is an important step in accepting yourself and building a relationship based on mutual respect and love. How breaking old patterns leads to true love. Everyone has a different set of beliefs and patterns that shape their perception of love. We often repeat the same mistakes in relationships because we unconsciously strive for familiar patterns, even if they are painful or destructive. Jung said that without awareness of our inner conflicts, we will continually fall into the same traps as before. For example, if you were unloved or unappreciated as a child, in your mature life, you will seek validation of your worth through the love of others, even if it is expressed in relationships where you are again unappreciated. It will be an unconscious attempt to regain lost feelings and find that missing piece of yourself in another person. But it is important to realize relationships cannot give you what you are missing inside. When you begin to realize that you are your own source of love and confidence, you stop looking for it from others. At this stage, you begin to realize that love is not something you can get from the outside, but something that naturally arises when you are internally harmonious and complete. Transformation happens when you stop trying to fix your life through your partners and start working on yourself. This takes effort and the realization that all change happens within you. You may need to learn to forgive yourself, get rid of old resentments, let go of past hurts. And only then, when you stop depending on external factors, will you start attracting people who will respect and appreciate you for who you are. This is the path to inner liberation that leads to harmonious and healthy relationships. Breaking old patterns begins with accepting your vulnerability and realizing that every person we enter into a relationship with is a mirror. When you change on the importance of personal boundaries in relationships. One of the key elements of a healthy relationship is the ability to set personal boundaries. Not only is this a way to protect yourself from manipulation and toxic people, but it is also a way to maintain your inner integrity. Carl Jung taught that our relationship with ourselves is directly related to how we perceive and set boundaries in our relationships with others. If you don't set clear boundaries, if you aren't able to say no, you will constantly blur your personal needs in favor of others. These relationships often become one-sided, where one person demands more than the other is willing to give. However, true love is not a sacrifice, but a collaboration between two independent individuals who respect each other and value personal boundaries. The inability to set boundaries often leads to one partner feeling neglected, unhappy, or disrespected. This can be the result of not being able to express his or her needs, or not getting enough attention and support from the other person. This leads to the accumulation of resentment and eventually the destruction of the relationship. Setting boundaries is an act of self-love. It means that you value yourself enough to not allow other people to violate your personal limits. When you know how to set boundaries, you enable others to respect you and you to love and respect yourself. Such relationships become healthy and balanced. Emotional independence and its importance. Emotional independence is another important aspect that helps to create healthy relationships. It does not mean that you have to be completely isolated or withdrawn. Emotional independence is the ability to remain emotionally whole and stable even when you are in a relationship. It is the ability to not lose yourself despite the influence of the other person. Jung taught that to be in harmony with yourself is not to be at odds with others, but in balance with yourself. Emotional independence allows you to not depend on external approval or love, but to make relationship choices based on what is truly important to you. This means you won't stay in a relationship just because you're afraid of being alone or losing something. Emotional independence gives you the power to choose a partner who aligns with your values and beliefs, rather than what an external need for love or acceptance dictates. In addition, emotional independence helps you become a more mature person who knows how to build healthy, fulfilling relationships where both partners have personal boundaries and mutual respect. This doesn't mean that you won't support each other emotionally, but instead helps you create a more mature and mutually supportive relationship. Emotional independence starts with self-confidence, with accepting your worth. When you are not dependent on other people's opinions, you begin to attract those who respect your autonomy and independence. This creates a strong foundation for sustainable and harmonious relationships. Acceptance and forgiveness as paths to inner healing. In order to move on and build healthy relationships, it is important to learn how to forgive. Forgiveness doesn't mean justifying someone else's actions. It means letting go of what is holding you back in the past, the pain and resentments that keep you from moving forward. Jung said that forgiveness is an act of inner healing. Forgiveness frees you from the chains of the past and allows you to become present to yourself and to others. Forgiveness involves accepting what has happened. It does not mean that you have to forget what happened. Forgiveness is a decision to put the past behind you in order to free yourself from negativity and move forward. When you forgive, you not only free the other person, but you give yourself a chance for a new beginning. Forgiveness helps you become more open and ready for a new relationship where old hurts and resentments are gone. If you don't forgive, you remain trapped in your past pain. This prevents you from moving forward and opening up to new possibilities. Forgiveness, on the other hand, allows you to become a more whole person who does not carry the weight of old mistakes, but uses them as lessons for personal growth. Forgiveness is important not only in relationships with others, but also in how we treat ourselves. We often punish ourselves for past mistakes, not giving ourselves permission to be imperfect. However, accepting and forgiving your own mistakes is the path to inner healing and growth. It empowers you to become who you want to be and to learn how to build harmonious relationships with yourself and others. Inner change is the path to new relationships. To really change your relationships, you need to start with yourself. It is important to realize that all change happens within you. This means that your outer world, including your relationships, will only change when you change your inner perception. When you begin to work on yourself, you don't fall in love with the person, you fall in love with what he triggers in you. Jung called it activation of the anima or animus. It's a projection of your inner feminine or masculine side. You see in the other what you lack in yourself. So when he leaves, it's like a piece of you dies. How to change the scenario and attract other relationships. The first step is to recognize you are responsible for how you are loved. When you are self-important, you set boundaries. When you respect yourself, you do not tolerate devaluation. When you feel valued, you do not chase after someone who does not choose you, and that's when someone appears who no longer demands anything from you. He just sees your essence because you have become transparent to yourself. You are the source of love, not its beggar. 12 to 13:30. Love is not found. It returns to the one who is already full inside. The most important connection is not with a partner, it is with yourself. If you want to change a relationship, start with an inner dialogue. Talk to yourself the way you would like to be talked to, because in the end, you can't give to another what you don't give to yourself. Carl Jung was right. He who looks outward is dreaming. He who looks inward wakes up. Share this video with those who break themselves over and over again for love. Let them know they don't need to become different to be loved. They need to become themselves.